Thanks all for coming. Baruch, where are you? There you are, Baruch. Wow. He's the one with the hat and the glasses and beard. It looks pretty cool. So, yeah, this is like our fourth year, I think. We've lost count because we're um we're dumb and we can't remember.
No, it's because
No,
it's because we're poets, and poets are
Oh,
supposed to be good with words, not numbers.
oh,
that's
that's
fair.
yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for that. So, but this, I think this is I think we're just going to call it the fourth year. And we're really excited. We have a great series. We have the first 3 months up. They do, I guess the JCC does 3 months at a time, so then we have, I think, some of the folks on the screen that have read in the series. Thanks for coming. Some that will read soon. Hi, Rick. How you doing? It's good to see you for so long. And so it's really nice to have kind of a community. It's also an international night. We have, in fact, I'm the only person from this country, US, of the three of us. So it's just kind of cool. Um, I'm going to introduce our first reader, who I have gotten to know on Facebook. That's one advantage of Facebook through message, and it's been a real pleasure getting to know Joanna Chen. Um, she's just I can just tell she's an amazing human being, especially since she's in Israel right now, and it's after 2 in the morning for her. So thank you. Um, Joanna Chen's full length poetry translation. She's a poet, a nonfiction writer, a memoirist, and a translator, serious translator. Her latest full-length poetry translations include Less Like a Dove and Frayed Light, which was a finalist for the Jewish Book Award. She's the translator of My Wild Garden and Shooting America, forthcoming with Penguin, winner of the Brigade Award for New Israeli Fiction. Her work has been published in Waxwing and Mantis and Poet Lore, among numerous other journals. She has a column or blog for the Los Angeles Times Book Review blog series, and teaches literary translations at the Helicon School of Poetry, and is co-curator and host for Yetzirah. If I pronounced that right, Rick, did I pronounce that right? Yetzirah. Rick,
Yeah.
could you unmute and just give us a minute and tell us what Yetzirah is for those that don't know?
Yes, I'll do my best. So Yitzhak, I'm never sure how to pronounce it either.
Yetzirah.
Joanna, you could probably correct me too. We are an international organization that supports Jewish poets, Jewish poetry, and we're open to all. We have a rich website with lots of our recordings of readings, of workshops, of the book club available, and lots of other resources, including a gigantic directory of Jewish poets from all over the place. So check us out if you haven't already. And I just want to say, Phil and Baruch and Erica, thank you so much for this incredible series. It's awesome to have this series that you're running. So thanks.
Thanks, Rick. Looking forward to your reading it
Thank you,
next
Rick.
month. I
Thank
think
you.
it's next month. Well, just a few more words about Joanna, though. On March 9th, the controversy erupted with her personal essay called "From the Edges of a Broken World." And I do want to talk about this for a minute. It was published and quickly retracted from Guernica, not the Picasso painting, but the journal. The retraction followed staff resignations. Maybe some of you have heard about this. Protesting her essay about her experiences as a volunteer in driving Palestinian children from the West Bank to receive care at Israeli hospitals, and how her efforts find a common ground. And it faltered kind of after the October 7th attack, but I believe she's still doing it a little bit now too, Joanna, I think. But I'm just so amazed at Joanna for writing the essay, for doing that kind of work, and helping those that need health care, helping to take them to that, and for experiencing that strange and awful experience of having that essay being taken and then rejected. But then it was written about, and it was published in the Washington Quarterly and written about in places like the New York Times, The Nation, the Los Angeles Times, the Sun, and probably others. And I just want to say thank you, Joanna, and it's great meeting you and hearing you read tonight. So, Joanna Chen.
Okay, thank you so much. And I just want to say that my little essay was actually very pleased with the outcome of everything that happened. And I think that more people got to read this essay than I could ever have hoped for. So remember, everybody, there is always a silver lining. And it was a pretty big silver lining as well for me. I'd like to thank Baruch and Philip and Tikva and Erica, smiling Erica, for inviting me to come here and read to you this evening. I am a literary translator, which means that I have the pleasure of speaking to you this evening in different voices and reading you poems with different perspectives and different takes on life. But this evening, all these voices share the same subject, which is war and its consequences. And just briefly, I'd like to say that the last year and a half have been unbearably difficult, and an appalling number of people have been killed, including more than 11,000 children in Israel, Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria. And watching the hostages being returned today and wondering what about the other hostages still to be released puts this whole country on edge. So today I'm going to be reading some of my favorite poets, Diti Ronen, Sarai Shavit, Agi Mishol, and Jonathan Berg. And finally, just so you know that I'm for real, I'm going to read one of my own poems. I'm going to start with, bear with me, it's 2 o'clock in the morning here. I'm going to start with Diti Ronen, and it's called Then There Was a War, and all the poems I'm reading tonight have been published. Then there was a war, and letters arrived, or not. I stood in the doorway and waited. It was the longest winter ever. It was the coldest winter ever, and no letters arrived. I stood in the doorway and waited, and you did not come back. Then you came back as if you had not come back. I stood in the doorway and waited. And the next poem is called Birthmarks. I was born in a place called homeland. I was born into a language called mother tongue. Then I grew up, switched places and languages, always carrying with me my homeland, my mother tongue. It took me years to understand. It is not me who carries them. It is them who carry me. And now there's a long poem which you can't see, but it's a prose poem in 4 parts, and I've called it Strange World 1. I was the wind singing through curtains, a window looking out at the view, washing, drying in the cold air. I folded love from corner to corner, placing it in carefully stacked sheets. All my hope I gathered there. I stood in the doorway and waited. 2. In the house, your face is curated. Your eyes thump against conjugations of the tongue, dictating the beat of the heart, the diction of the blood as it pumps through your veins. A wail becomes a laugh, a groan displaced through the labyrinth of rooms. Your image is reflected in the mirror that hangs in the hall. Now I am two, which is one. 3. On the Sabbath morning, the house came to a dead halt, sealed its apertures, held its breath. The toys stood in their boxes, the books on the shelves, the cups on hooks, the water in a jug, the rice in a saucepan. The cracks held themselves in readiness, and no man said a word, nor woman. 4. Now even the deer have left, their steps in the forest subsiding. A cold wind is also a voice and distant music, a man turning over in his sleep, dreaming of home. Anything is possible. Music will magnify, wind will waltz, deer will dance at the edge of the valley, their hooves imprinted on the forest floor. Is everybody still here? Yes, okay. You're very quiet. The next poem I'm going to read is by a beautiful poet called Sarai Shavit, and it's called Instinct. And anybody who has children is going to understand this poem, even if you don't actually, but Instinct. To tuck in, to leave a light on at night, to promise the missile will not fall nearby, to close eyes, to punch the wall, to pick at the scab, to face the posters and promise you won't be kidnapped, that yes, for sure they give them water to drink, that no, they don't cook them their favorite food, to admit it's tough to breathe underground, to tuck in, to leave a light on at night, to promise the missile will not fall nearby, to pour wine into a coffee mug, to rub ointment on a sting, to wipe your eyes dry, to crumple the edge of the sky, to find between the sheets a pair of wide eyes, to promise false promises every single night. Now I'm going to read a couple of poems by another of my favorites. This is Jonathan Berg, who we have a book together, and it was a book made up of basically 3 of his poetry books. And right now, it's a bit of a secret, but we're just finishing a new book, which doesn't even have a name. And I thought that I might read you a couple of poems from this new book. And really, although some of the poems were written before October 7, I do think that they all have some bearing on the situation today. Now, Jonathan Berg used to live on a settlement, on a religious settlement, with his family, and he was a combat soldier in the army, and he speaks with great understanding of the situation and great sorrow. And the first poem I'm going to read is called Lesson at Dusk. Okay. Lesson at dusk. We reach the borders where neglect accumulates. Wind embeds in silver butterflies of wire, defeated flags of carton and paper. Only a faint trace remains of the hills, penciled in, partially erased, rising and falling over the horizon. I pass into a dream, the air scorched, my youth over. The dog's face, sculptured with yearning, continues motionless to track the moon. Then I understand. There will always be a dividing line, a frontier of voice, of sound and time. Ash falls from my head from my hand into silence, decline. It's so funny that every time I read this, I read this afternoon to myself, and I also read ash falls from my head. It's actually falls from my hand. The next one is called Tense. And here he talks about his army days. And as you all know, Sunday in Israel is actually the first day of the week and not a day of rest. Tense. Sundays were bitter. The day I returned to base. My hands held steel, but my mind continued wandering over soft skin, the indentation of a neck, the scent of soap and sweat. I remember the nights of Abu Snena, a figure moving through bushes, another moving through a dream, a contradiction without which music is just notes. If you once chased after a boy, you will forever chase him. If you once said to an old man, you're not passing this checkpoint, you will forever get up on a Sunday with trembling hands and mumbling mouth. I still shout down the two-way radio, urging them to come. On Saturday nights, I talk in my sleep, asking the spirit of Sabbath to uproot those tents we slept in, to plant them in the sky. Evening Run, also Jonathan Berg. Evening Run. I love this poem. Down in the Valley of the Cross lies a monastery in which a nun lights a candle for the lonely child of God. Within yearning, you are not alone. It is only waiting for the dead that distances them from you. I run quicker when thinking of those who are no more. I'm a machine. My sweat is vapor, rising above an exhausted heating element. How many times will I boil, God? How many times will words be spoken low? How many times a violin? How many times will amen appear out of the blue, facing the bright, bringing me to my knees? I run fast, so my body will say no more, the soul facing a history book. I want a body of lightness. I want those years on the grass in the sun. I run for the boy I once was, the one I no longer find in these heavy, stiff bones. I light a candle for myself and run with it through the darkness. Isn't it gorgeous, that one? This is a poem I think I read at Yetzirah. That's how you say it, Yetzirah, by the way. And it's called Cabin at the Forest Edge by Agi Mishol. Agi Mishol is the first poet that I ever translated, and I basically fell in love with translation when I began reading her poems. And I started hearing these poems kind of in English at the back of my mind. And then we met and we've never looked back. It's called Cabin at the Forest Edge. And I think that this poem has a lot of optimism in it. It's basically saying, you know, not everything is that bad. So, cabin at the forest edge. Not every sleep falls, not every evening descends, and not every old age creeps up. Some doze like peas in their green pods, or sprawl with ease on marshmallow clouds. Not every angel terrifies, not every apple poisons, and not every look pierces. Some gather us up from the way we lost and illuminate a cabin at the forest edge. And I hope we can all find that kind of a cabin for ourselves somehow in this world. And finally, I am going to read a poem of my own that was just published in Moment magazine. And I just must say that this poem was written at the Yetzirah conference okay, I'm having a 2 a.m. blackout here. Dan Bellum, it was his workshop. We did a workshop on Genesis, and this is what came out of it. Here it is. Ellipsis Genesis. We speak of beginnings as we trudge uphill to the observatory, sparks lifting in the sudden gloom, our laughter ahead of us, our sadness hovering somewhere in the firmament within the unrhyming silence we long to articulate. Clouds gather above our heads, and there's a pause in the script. 3 dots as Cain's eyes scan the ground for a rock. 3 dots while Abel, standing a little away from his brother, turns around to face him, faint surprise circuiting his face. Another pause. Adam and Eve, off stage in the dark, are still fumbling together, dirt under their nails, anger in their hearts, until a sudden breeze whips up and clouds make way for the next calamity. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Joanna. I had been waiting a long time to encounter you and your work, and you did not let us down in any way. Thank you so much, and thanks for staying up so late with us.
I'm awake now, by the way. That really woke me up.
Okay,
Woke us
thank
up.
you. All right, now we're on to our next poet, who actually happens to be my co-host, the remarkable Phil Terman, a self-professed delicatessen Jew who owns a great proficiency in composing wonderful poetry, especially when it comes to capturing portraits of the daily life of Jews, but also of the world at large. To his credit, Philip also owns a great consistency in producing high quality poems. He rarely strikes out with a poem. He steps up to the plate and gets on base almost every time, even if he has to get hit by the pitch, whatever that might mean in this metaphor. His poetic ingredients may include, among a great variety of things, visions of his native Cleveland, his father's old-style humor and life as a car dealer, entanglement with Jewish guilt, tales of his traditional mother, mournful pictures of his brother who was departed too soon, and stories from the Torah. Moreover, my co-host is a great advocate for poetry. If it were not for him, we would not be here tonight, for this series was his idea. Although we also have to acknowledge Erica and the JCC of Buffalo. Amazingly, in addition to his numerous volumes of poetry spanning decades, just last year he released 2 new books: The Whole Mishpacha, New and Selected Jewish Poems by Ben Yehuda Press, and This Blossoming Everything, by Saddle Road Press. Take it away, Phil.
I feel like I was just hit by a pitch, but thank you. Wow. That introduction will go down in the annals. Thank you, Baruch.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Joanna. That's fantastic. And Erica. I'm just going to read I'll read a couple of poems from this Mishpucha book. Is it Mishpucha or Mishpocha? Because it depends on what side of the continent you're from. This first one is called the Schwitz. Speaking of Yiddish, it's German for sweat, but it sort of explains itself in the poem. If anybody's been to a sauna, it's not a lot like a Schwitz, but it's the closest thing to it. If the Torah is our lives, our portion was sung in that sanctuary of a steam house by a minion of 10 13-year-old boys and a counselor, a secular rabbi who knew the streets like an emissary from the world where our lives are already sealed. He led us past the sign that still reads, members only, listed in the phone book as the Russian bath and tea room, but known to the initiates as sweat in Yiddish, on 116th and Luke, our parents' old neighborhood when all the world was kosher, and on Sabbath mornings they walked in tennis shoes under laundry drying above the street, past houses of uneven boards and sunken roofs, the fish market, the famous Zeiger's Delicatessen, before it changed, all except this small brownstone with a mezuzah on the door. In the locker room, I imitated his motions as he took off his suit coat, muscles bulging behind white shirt and tie, his pants, the undershirt, the underwear, and I was afraid to go on, to show myself in front of strangers. Come on, he said. Here we're all the same underneath. Cots with clean sheets lined the central room. He instructed, after we sweat, we rest. Adjacent, the dining area, kosher pickles and hot peppers and bowls under a photograph of the Wailing Wall. After we rest, we eat. Then we go and sweat some more. What was I? Okay, we were with history, but all we knew was that we were naked among men who were reading newspapers or talking about how it was all changing, and the law was in our own hands. Our counselor led us into the steam room where old men sat on towels beside buckets of cold water. They'd pour over their heads and fill up again. We began at the lower bench, facing the hole in the wall where the sandstones glowed like burning bushes. Then we moved up, rising with the heat, daring the others to lie full length at the top, long as they can stand it, longer, until the room was so full of gray mist we became outlines of figures floating in a secluded heaven, simmering out all our small tensions, and still he'd say, throw in more water. It's not hot enough. Our heads down, my hands, like his, gripping splintered wood against the oncoming rush. Wow. Has anybody been to a Schwitz? Does anybody have a Schwitz in your town? Because I miss it. I can use one right now. Okay. I'll change the well, since Baruch said I was a deli Jew, thank you
You're a
for that.
self-professed Jew. Don't push that on me.
Okay, all right, I won't. I'll read this poem about a deli because let's see, where is it? I know I had it here. Okay, yeah, because I know someone on the screen's father had a deli, right, Michelle? Okay, so I told you I had a deli poem. So since you're here, I have to read it and reinforce my deli Jew reputation. My father was a used car salesman, and this is a section of a long poem called "The Used Car Lot." And if you want more of that poem, um, you can find out more, which I'm sure you're all anxious to find out more about this used car lot. This is called "A Cast of Thousands." Remember Cecil B. DeMille and Ten Commandments? My dad's kid brother, Hi, worked 14-hour days at Cotton Club Soda Factory through the Depression and the war, dreaming of stardom. Wavy 18, wavy black hair, 6'6", dimples. Everyone's head would turn when he'd stride through like an undiscovered star through the double doors of Corky and Lenny's delicatessen, where you would take a number and order the smoked fish, the lox, the spicy corned beef, the herring and wine sauce, and sour cream from the old women in red schmattes, speckled with vanilla splotches, faces patched with rouge and lipstick, wishing all the customers a mazel tov and filling the air with their kibbutz songs. You want I should slice the challah? What's the matter? Here, you think it's not fresh? And the clatter and the clutter from the meat counter and the kvetching in the corner booth where the altar cockers gathered and kibitzed about the machers and the kanakers. All my Yiddish words in one line. My father had his own parable about the man who paid a ruble per day to wait by the Eastern Wall for the Messiah. How can you work for such low wages? They asked the guy. He replied, low wages, sure, but at least the work is steady. His brother, though, hitchhiked all the way for a role in the Ten Commandments. He played a slave. Then he went into real estate. Each year, it appears around Passover like Elijah, and we'd watch close. My father suddenly pointing to the set. There he is. No, wait, there he is. No, no, I'm sure this time it's him. All of us straining for the familiar face. He's still the one everyone asks about. Some days when it's dark early, my father comes home from the used car lot, kicks the snow off, tells us how none would start, and it seemed his blood would stop, and we should all be in California. Okay. It's going to be hard to change the mood, but I'm going to try. Anyway, traveling here to sort of an ancestry, looking back and looking forward. We adopted two children from China, and this kind of it's about somewhat about that, and it's the longest title I have. My Ukrainian Jewish grandparents and our Chinese child's birth parents meet at a cafe and discuss her future. Okay? Shmuel and Malka and our child's Chinese birth parents are sipping tea at a cafe somewhere between the Pale of Settlement and central rural China. They speak in signs and gestures, swirling arms like dancers, shaping fingers into figures, standing up and swaying, contorting bodies to emphasize some obscure point, even employing pauses and long silences to further their conversation. The men gesture. My grandfather's yarmulke is as black as I imagine our child's birth father's hair. The women continue to fill their husbands' cups and stare off into the distance. The men agree on the major issue. Each will have to sacrifice their darlings, their children, send them away across miles of land and ocean into a realm farther and more unfamiliar than they could understand, even in their own tongue, a place perhaps like those far away and never lands, in the stories in each of their childhood's palace on a cloud, a temple beyond the stars, Jerusalem or Shangri-La. It's better to think of that strange country that way than to ponder the potential dangers, strangers in strange lands, years of forced labor, the poverty and destitution they themselves know something about, each in their own way, these farmers and peddlers, each of them know dark to dark. Their gestures are more subtle and sophisticated. Now they even forget, and sometimes they break out into their Yiddish and their Mandarin, which sounds as exotic as a gathering of multicolored birds singing through the tea's steam. The bill, which is grief, arrives. They agree to split it. They accompany each other to the gate that opens up into their own centuries. Through unfathomable signs, they gesture to meet again. All right. Wow. What was I reading next? Huh. I kind of want to read the title poem, The Whole Mishpucha, because I've never read it, and it's the title poem, and I kind of like it because it brings in two poets. The last section of this book is all about Jewish poets and writers. And so it's called the Whole Mishpocha, which of course you may know means family, for Gerald Stern and Millie Terman. Of course, Millie's my mom, who was a poet in her own way. Clearly your Jewish soul was out hunting mine, Stern said in his hand-scrawled yellow line note I'm reading the day after he died. Born in 1925, same year as my mother, who said, we breathed, we were Jewish. You both had the Depression and the Big War, and Eisenhower's Great America, and houses of ticky-tacky, and lunch counters in Vietnam, and that beautiful tragic president, and the radicals, and that Meshuggah tricky dicky, and all that nuclear mishigas to look forward to, both Polish, Ukrainian, both commanded by the laws of the same wild God who never leaves us alone, Stern and dirty Pittsburgh, Millie and dirty Cleveland, both poets, Stern a macher, a real landsman, Millie a bissel abyssal shtick with rhyme at bar mitzvahs, weddings, Stern with a little more Yiddish a cup, and Millie a whole mishmash of Hamish, both nudging me not to be a putz, but a mensch, at which I failed, my soul on the loose for atonement, wondering why I haven't written a poem about Jeremiah, who every Thursday at 2:30 visits our prophets class, where in our cracked voices we kvetch aloud the bad news to the Philistines, the Moabites, the Ammonites, warning that every head is bald and every beard is shorn, and the Edomites, progeny of Esau, whose renouncing of his birthright marked him and his descendants. And when I open my heart to the plea of the needy and judge not the case of an orphan, I can drink the fruit of the vine with Jerry, and especially Millie, who, New Year's Eve in Jerusalem, drunk on Manischewitz, in the King David Hotel, hoisted herself up onto the bed and lifted her full glass in a l'chaim, not to Jeremiah, that bullfrog, but her whole mishpucha in that holy city, finally. Okay, two more. I am going to read a poem by a friend of mine and Joanna's, Nasser Rabbah, who the poem was he is a Gazan poet, and he's one of my favorite poets and one of my favorite people. Well, we've messaged often on Facebook, and he is going through a time that you can imagine, living in a refugee camp in Gaza, yet writing the most extraordinary poems. I have a friend in another tragic place, Aleppo, Syria, who I have been in touch with for years, and he translates from the Arabic into the English, and I help him with the English, so I feel I have a hand in it. Not the big hand, but a small little finger or two. And Nasser posted a poem. He posts poems a lot on his Facebook site, as well as other things, and they're all very powerful. And it was in Arabic, and I knew, I could tell it was a poem, and I sent it to my friend Saleh in Aleppo, and he translated it, and it was amazing. And I asked Nasser if I could, try to get it published, and he thanked me for that. He's so kind. And it was. And it was called 4000 at the time. It was written on December 1st, 2023. And if you go to Nasser Rabbah's Facebook page, you'll see 64 postcard size children, pictures of children. And the poem was called 4000, but I asked him if I could change the name to 14,000. And he said, sure. And so he allowed me to publish it in this book with the explanation I just gave you. So I'm going to read it. 14,000. 14,000, 14,000, 14,000. Not 4, not 40, not 400, 14,000. 14,000 soft hands touching right now the gate of Allah. A chain of little angels covering the sky of this life. Life looks old without children. 14,000 lost kisses staggering in the air. 14,000 white butterflies without flowers to land on. 14,000 times the word mama will not be said. 14,000 times the word papa will shatter the heart each morning and evening. 14,000 colorful shoes, pairs of colorful shoes tucked under empty beds. 14,000 school bags guarding the sorrows of homes. 14,000 morning sandwiches left on tables that no one will reach for. 14,000 broken bicycles abandoned on the roads. 14,000 one would not enter the school door and will not attend graduation ceremonies, will not buy Eid clothes. Nobody could ask about their wishes when they grow up, sitting forever next to a river of tears. 14,000 photos on the walls, in 14,000 fathers' pockets, sipping grief. Starving sparrows on 14,000 mothers' windows, pecking the heart's bread. 14,000 scents that won't leave their pillows. 14,000 books gathering the dust of longing. 14,000 eternal laughs breaking the glass of time. They will not grow older, will not depart from the last scene, will not flee the rubbles, will not find an ambulance, will not make it to a hospital. No mourners escorting them to funerals, no flowers on their graves, only 14,000 on the news. And I just want to follow that with one last poem. Thanks for listening to that. The last poem, this is actually true. Shalom really is my middle name. It's called Shalom is my middle name. What my mother left me, the word we should mean when we say every other word. The word we want to be more than a word. The word I carry tucked between other words, from my birth to my death, the word embarrassed by its public display, preferring its privacy, perhaps lifting its first letter, then retreating back into the silence. But there it is, stamped on my passport, risking itself each time it passes through security, each time it wants to haul its baggage from one country to the next. Why, after all these journeys, does it suddenly step outside and assert itself, aware as it is of the separations? Why this hello, this goodbye, this peace, this salam? Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. It was an honor to hear your words and a pleasure as usual.
Thank you, Baruch.
You're welcome, my friend. Now, let me introduce our next and last poet. The highly talented Tikva Hecht is a Canadian writer who thrives in different mediums. She writes poetry, fiction, lyrical essays, and experiments by creating hybrid genres. Her poems have explored, among many things, the soul, perceptions of sin, and as she described in one of her poems that I particularly liked, the similarity between permanence and nothingness, between dust as dead skin and luminous dancing dust. Tikva has a mastery of wordcraft and poetic invention. Perhaps her inquisitive poetry is the result of her diverse higher education, as she holds an MFA in creative writing from USC Riverside and an MA, in philosophy from the New School for Social Research and a BA in Judaic Studies from Yeshiva University. Her first book was published in 2024 and entitled Tashlik. We will make sure everyone gets her link. Everyone gets a link to that book before the night is out. Thank you for being with us tonight, Tikva. Please take it away.
Thank you. That was such a nice introduction. I wasn't expecting that. That was really, thank you. And thank you, Philip and Erica and both, and Joanna for being here, and to everyone for coming. Sorry, I said for being here, but not just being here for planning this whole thing. I'm going to read a couple poems from my book, and then I wanted to share some new poems that I have not read yet. So this is their debut. Okay, so the first one is a longer one, and then the rest are shorter. This is called Configurations of Worship. The poet sips her water, carries on. Of course, in my work, God is always a metaphor. A student interrupts. For what? What? A metaphor for what? The poet leans forward as if to spit. For God, of course, what else? The student does not know. The poet carries on. 2. I am an anatomy of false gods, and if you ask how anyone can be so stupid, I will ask back, what worship isn't the worship of what can be made from dust and from flames, from muscling thoughts and long pleas? I will tell you every conception of God is a false God made in the image of God, which is to say every conception of God is a conception of self, and every self the mirage of God posing as a false God, and so you do the math. I am tired of this logic and its aesthetic. Please, God, let me be rid of you. 3. The student explains to his cat that what makes a poem good is its necessity. It must rid silence of what needs to be said. The student explains to his poem that it is saying too much. What makes a poem good is how closely it mouths what cannot be said. The student explains to the poet that he could not complete the assignment. I'm not any good. 4. I have tried to be good. That is a lie. I have tried. Go on. 5. The poet had asked the students to write a prayer. The poet had asked the students to name the prayer after themselves. The poet likes names. The poet likes the idea of names. They remind us of what is not interchangeable. The poet does not like her name. The poet does not like the idea of her name incorporated. It seems a kind of embalmment. No, just a way to save on taxes, says her accountant. The poet likes this accountant. This accountant's name is Stu. The poet likes this name. It reminds her of nothing. 6. I don't think I can write until I've read more. I've never read Hamlet. Shakespeare never read Hamlet either until he wrote it. Is that a metaphor? Go write a poem. A metaphor for God? Monday, your poem on my desk. 7. I want to touch the damp earth and become of it. I want to weep an indecipherable language. I want with precise kisses for you to taste this language and speak of it. I want to bind our longing into sheaves and call it prayer and call it poetry and call God to give testimony on our behalf and together half listen. 8. The poet thinks of stew. The poet thinks of stew even when nothing reminds her of him. The poet thinks of stew because nothing reminds her of him. He is like nothing, the poet thinks. The poet likes this. It seems pure. But the poet would not use this word. Stew has a partner. Stew has 3 children. Stew likes poetry. Stew remembers liking poetry in school. 9. On Tuesday, the student leaves his poem on the poet's desk. The poem is a blank sheet of paper. Blank, that is, except for the title. Go figure. 10. Me and God were like 2 discarded skins, each mistaking the other for a body. My body and me were like 2 discarded gods, each mistaking the other for a name. 11. I liked your poem. Did you get it? I don't need to get it. I liked it. But did you get it? I don't think you understand how poetry works. It's a metaphor. For what? You didn't get it. I need to fail you, I said Monday, but you liked it. Yes, it's a terrible poem, but I liked it. Good, I don't care if I fail. 12. I have tried to care for your wisdom. I don't know what good it has done. I have tried to care for your creation. I don't know if I do. I have tried to create. Go on. Isn't that enough? 13. The poet shows Stu the student's poem. He laughs. He likes it. The poet asks him if he gets it. He doesn't think there's anything to get. The poet folds the page and puts it away. Don't let him get away with that. He'll start thinking everything's profound. I really shouldn't share student work. Does it matter? I don't know his name. His name is his work. 14. Did you mean to leave us your delicate peels, spiral figures on a tile floor, a film of sweet flesh barely left by the knife to line each curl? Traces rich with what they are not, the fruit grows in the air. Did you mean to leave us your likeness and yearning? Prints of it line the kitchen drawers, lie tucked below uneven table legs, wrapped like fat around thighs, around and around and around. I have a name for you my mouth does not know. It is like 4 fingers resting on the down of an arm they do not touch. No, it is not like that at all. This next poem is called She Opened a Shop. She opened a shop, a corner store, where she sells beliefs she sold before, vacuums door to door, so she knows the business. But she wanted more, her own place to stay put, her own shelves to keep clean. And Lord, how she dusts nimbly between ribbons and tissue paper along the countertop, in case you might ask for gift wrap. You can browse if you like, she doesn't care if you touch her wear, she's touched it herself. It's durable, she swears, though some's better for wear, and once in a while she's just out of stock. Still, she has an eye for the right size and a sense of decor, plus reinforcements galore, words and ointments that will keep you coming back. Some say she reads minds, some say she's just smart. 3 kittens in the back room come and go as they please. Her hands catch their ears. What to do with herself after hours, and there's nothing she wants. She locks the door, checks the lock, once, twice, once more. She wants to make sure she'll hear if it rattles. She waits to hear the crash of glass, the thud of a thief piling her beliefs into a sack. Oh, wouldn't some intrusion help pass the night? And besides, she's always supposed, what a thief would take has got to be right. And this is the last one from the book. This is called She Tells Me She Has Suicidal Thoughts. So many, so many. So this was where her voice lay low these past weeks. And now they imitate the waves that rushed us, first time at the ocean. Jeans rolled to the thick of our calves and still. It wasn't long before we wore a sample of the ocean's body, clothes heavy as a child, swinging from our necks. Sat then like happy things, who had never forsaken movement, and language was a tonic of breath and salt, and a pulse impatient with life, brimming with life, with only sound for what we knew by heart, saying over and only, so beautiful, over and again, as if words could imitate the rush of waves, carry us where they might. All right, so I'm gonna share some new poems now. This is called Dogma. When I was young, I had many adversaries. These were my beliefs, and I loved them, and they pursued me through trickery, evasion, and camouflage. And I speared them like salmon, and worshipped the spirit of their rotting flesh, and danced with them, and slept with them, and let them sleep, standing watch against ill wills that might invade our holy war. The largest of all hunched in the core of the earth, dressed as lava and God, and promised to be unimaginable. Now I am near middle age, and all my adversaries are signing peace treaties. They want trade and protection, have children to care for, and hours to catch up on idling. Against their better judgment, they appease me with promises neither of us expect they will respect, and confide in me when old wounds act up or new aches. I am no threat now. The truth is, I still like their company very much. Even their indolence is as delicious as water. For instance, the other day, opening a window, the unity of everything was replete and sweet. And though I know some will say creation must exist outside of God, or perfection is a sham, and some will say creation must exist inside of God, or perfection is a sham, I did not care about perfection, only my own inkling that the illusion of this world is its separation into spheres, and that, like the ancients supposed, these do sing, and that this is the tragedy of all beauty, not just as Rilke said, that it annihilates us, but that in its completion, it annihilates itself. This next one is called Bigfoot. For a very short time, I got very obsessed with Bigfoot and Bigfoot sightings, and in the 60s, the idea of people getting captivated by going out and trying to find this creature and what exactly was going on there. So I wrote a poem about it, and this is called Bigfoot. I could have been a god. 1967. Fashions ran cruder. You wanted a monster or something manufactured. I do believe you like the thought of uncut seams itching me inside of a cheap suit. They say I must have burnt the suit afterward, the scent of burning rubber tearing at my scheming eyes, burnt it or buried it. They say I am a gentle creature, likely omnivorous, that I live in small packs, that have the lifespan of a normal human, am not, of course, human, may bury my dead, may be where you come from, may speak a simple language, may shriek like a bird ripped of its skin, that I stink, and am not, by any stretch of the imagination, human, may be, after all, just a man, may mate for life. In other words, I'm not interested in knowing you. There is enough for me in the tiptoeing rain, how it tilts the leaves and feels my prints, shapes me in the silences of its percussion. All silences shape me, I tell you. I live where the grass spreads, where the night stretches. I take the shape of your loneliness. You think you wait to see me, but you wait in my image to be uncertain. You want me this way, I tell you. I could have been a god, but you insist. I am a man, or a wild thing, or the wind, distilled through yelping phantoms of your exhausted hope. This next one is called 10 Months. The summer before you died, my friend planted a garden. All summer she watered the twisting root with the soil. You died in January, and after the thaw the colors came, amaranth pink and royal blue. Brown-eyed Susans with their golden manes, like sightseers waving silk flags to sailing ships. These delicate petals with the moxie of hard-won etches in a picnic table. Someone was here. Each letter a lost and found of wayward thrusts and white-bearing curves, much like the pause of the cup plant that did indeed, so diligently it seemed an afterthought, keep safe the rainwater for the painted ladies to drink. So to the one who says you reap what you sow, I show you the anguish grown like moss on my brothers, my sister. And to the one who says there is no rhyme or reason, I tell you the rumors are true. I picked the wild strawberries. I tasted the anise leaves. And then I have two short ones. I just want to make sure I'm okay for time. Yeah, all right. So this is called What You May Remember. Not the words, but the shadows on his hands. The way she held her lips apart, as if biting on a shadow, an inch thick. The impulse, remember this. The mind biting down, remember this. The sense, here is something, something different, something essential. Teeth marks all over, something before, something after. This is the last one, which I have to actually thank Baruch helped me with this one. I took some of your edits. I came back to it. I shared this with you months ago, and you had suggested an edit that I thought, no way, am I doing that? Came back to it last night. I was like, oh, he was right. Much better. So thank you for that. Once there was a city, and it was my deception. Like many cities, it too had an artist's quarter and a center of commerce. It too held elections, and here too everyone would follow, and only half would vote. Many neighbors did not know each other, but when this one's sink backed up, this one's ceiling wept. The city had good years and bad years, and many spoke of moving elsewhere, but didn't. We want to stay close to the grandkids, you will hear a couple say. Sometimes they drive outside the city to watch the wild birds, pick seeds from wild hearts of flowers they forgot to name. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. I guess that's it.
Well done, all of you. Very well done.
Are there any supposed to ask any questions or any
Yeah,
I feel like I just ate a full plate of poetry and I'm stuffed. I can't. It was so good. It was so good that there's nothing more to do.
no dessert, Baruch?
No, there's no room for dessert.
Okay.
There's always room for dessert. Come on
There
now.
is. They say eat dessert first because life is uncertain. Maybe.
Ah.
Sorry, that's an old one.
It's new to me.
Too funny. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to unmute, or you can still use the chat, whichever works for you.
I was going to ask Joanna something.
Yeah.
Joanna, do you translate Arab poets to us as well as Hebrew poets?
Speaking.
Okay,
Who is speaking?
I'm speaking.
Ah,
So, yeah,
yeah, so I translate poets from Arabic, but I always stress that I do not do it on my own. I have somebody in Washington who helps me to do it because I can't actually read, but I'm very kind of attentive to voice and and rhythm and the rhythms of Arabic, and so we do it together. But I mostly translate Hebrew. But I also have translated Nasser's beautiful poetry, and I recommend if you just look him up, you'll come up with lots of stuff. And he has a book coming out soon.
April, just a few months.
Right, that's right. And he's a beautiful person, and his poetry is outstanding.
Yeah, I can't wait for his book.
And I think this is the whole point for me of literary translation is to be that bridge so that other people may read experiences that are not their own.
And for poets to communicate beneath this the conflict, and that poets can really have real communication, and that we're the human quality of people can read each other's work and feel what they feel and empathize and have friendships and meanwhile, thank you for your work.
Thank you all.
Very good, very good. Like I said, you all did incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. I've missed these. We haven't done this in a good long while, so this was nice getting back into the groove of things.
So no more kibitzers out there?
Uh,
Who do we have up next in February? I think Rick is reading, isn't he? Yeah? Do you have the schedule,
February.
Erica? Or...
I
Oh,
do. I have, yep, Richard, Jessica Greenman, and Valerie Bacharach.
Baccarat.
Bacharach. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be nice. And that will be what date? February.
February 20th. It'll still be virtual, and you guys can sign up on the website. So I will send an email out that has the links to everyone's books. You guys can check it out. I'll also put those registering links for February and March. And feel free if you have any questions, you can email me, or if you need the link, or you get, having trouble signing up, just shoot me an email and I will be sure to help you out.
Erica, could we
Yeah.
get, Erica, this is Renee Schwartz. Could we just have a list of the poets that Joanna read their poems? Because I don't know how to spell their names, so it's hard for me to look them up.
Yeah.
It's
Sure,
in the,
I can
Put
see.
them
in the
up.
chat. It's in the chat.
Yeah.
But I didn't see it in the chat.
Here, I'll
I
put it
just put
out.
it in the chat. I
Oh.
just put it in the chat. You can see now.
Oh, there you go. It's right there. Yep.
Okay.
Joanna just put it in around 8:14 p.m. You should see it right
I
there.
put it up. I just put it up again.
Oh, thank
Perfect.
you. Thank
And-
you.
It starts
Erica,
with Dee Dee Ronan.
This
Oh,
is
okay.
recorded, so this will be on YouTube at some point.
Yes.
So you'll let everyone know, and everybody could let everybody they know who you think might be interested. They're all
Yep.
our other, I think all our other
Trying to
readings
get into the
and
chat now,
things like that.
so I could see the list before it disappears.
I can also, I'll put it in the email, Renee.
Oh, thank you.
Just in case. Yeah. I'll add their names in the email as well. There you go. Okay, perfect. And then yeah, with that email will also be the YouTube link. So hopefully we'll get that up tomorrow and I'll send it out, and feel free to rewatch it if you would like, and share with friends, family, all that fun stuff, and share the love of poetry.
Thank you,
Interesting.
Joanna, Tikva, and of course, Phil, for another great night of poetry in our series of poets. It was really wonderful. And thank you all for joining us. It really, seeing all these people in the audience really made it a wonderful event.
Thank you, Baruch.
Great. Thank you, Baruch. Thank you, Philip. And thank you, Joanna and Tikva. Thank you all so much.
All
And
right.
all right, everybody,
you.
have a good one.
Thanks.
I don't know where you are, but stay warm if it's cold like it is in Buffalo.
Thanks, everybody.